We were searching for ways to provide for our families and our friends better food. I mean, growing up around farming communities, you know what fresh produce is supposed to taste like. And having been down in Florida for so many years, I forgot what fresh, you sort of lose that when you're buying at, major, stores and not fresh stuff. And then you start to do some homework and find out what they do to apples, for example, and put them in silos and they gas them to get them ripe and just, they start to lose their flavor, and we wanted something better for our children and our friends. My husband grew up in New York, and one of his first jobs in high school and then into college was that he worked at an estate that did lots of horticulture and seeding, and he learned how to prune and how to trim and how to seed, and it just fit, and then came back to it later on. We are two faith-based families. Everything comes from Christ, and we wouldn't exist without God. So to him goes all the glory, because we wouldn't exist without him, and he grows these plants, not us. Mm-hmm. We're just keepers of his bounty, and to him goes all the glory, so that's sort of what we stuck with.
Right now we have about 15 to 16 kids that we do, we call them the dreamers, and we're teaching them how to get their studies together and grow doing what you're doing. I think we need to grow something that we can feed the community, like the homeless, or teach the young kids what they can eat, healthy foods. Absolutely. That's what we're into, that's what we want to do. Teach them about farming and eating healthy. That can really change their lifestyle, or understanding what you're eating, and it's healthy to eat it.
Yeah, as soon as you start to grow things and you start to watch how things grow and what goes into growing them, you get a little bit more, you pay more attention.
Okay.
Let's just put it that way.
And with some of the plants and things that we have left, we can give it to the homeless or give it to some shelters. That's what we want to do.
Regardless of what kind of farm you're doing, you're always going to have excess. Schooling today is teaching kids how to pass certain tests, but it doesn't equip them for life. And being able to have a trade and a skill, and knowing how to grow food is absolutely a trade and a skill, and can be beneficial for their entire lives. So I'm all for it. Helps keep kids out of trouble too. Keep you busy with your hands, keep you busy with your mind. Makes a big difference. We bought the property, when did we get the property? March last year, the very last day of March last year. We didn't start growing until April or May, and our first fall was this past fall. Yeah. So we're not even at a year. There's such an advantage to vertical growing and to the hydroponic systems. It's super water efficient. It's great use of space that's not being used. The downside to that would be is how sustainable it is, depending on how much they charge for your space. This particular parcel is under 5 acres, and it's entirely underutilized. I mean, there's about 6 or 8 greenhouses back over there that we haven't even touched.
Okay.
I mean, you can grow so much because it's vertical space. So it's a very different kind of thing. It's a 50,000 plant farm, so it's a 50,000 space farm. The sheer number of acres we would need to put out this kind of volume would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres, and that kind of real estate is incredibly expensive where we are. We're not certified organic. We follow all organic practices, but we're not a certified organic grower.
Why is that so? Because you grow, or you got mixes of things, is that?
Why we're not certified? One, it's an incredibly expensive proposition to get into. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more government discussion and involvement, and I don't know that it's necessarily worth it for us. Our produce is fantastic. We follow all the right things just because we need to get now the government has decided that saying it's certified organic is big business.
Okay.
I don't necessarily need that.
Okay.
We use cocoa fiber and pine bark. So it's ground up coconut fiber, and then the pine bark is in the bottom. But depending on the crop, you would raise or lower that pine bark. But you can use stuff like perlite and vermiculite. It just depends on what media that you're most comfortable using.
What was the purpose of you putting them in the pots like this for the beets and radishes?
Beets and radishes, because of the size of them, they need the ground pots. Mm-hmm. They don't grow well in the towers.
Okay.
I can grow 6 or 8 radishes in a ground pot versus 1 per spot in the towers.
Whatever we grow here?
Yes.
That we want to make sure whatever's in the bottom of our pot, the water could run off of here and be used for the...
It always will.
Okay.
So you always have a ground pot at the bottom of your towers that you will put plants in. And typically, short of something that's specialized like the strawberries, peppers are a little bit more specialized, and tomatoes are a little bit more specialized, you can grow whatever's growing here will benefit at the bottom there. Although it's entirely different than dirt farming, it is a high maintenance kind of farming. Hydroponics requires more scientific mind. You have to monitor the water pH levels every day. You have to be making sure that your levels all stay in a tight range, and you just have to be sort of that methodical mind to be watching that. The tubes can get clogged sometimes, so you constantly have to be walking through and looking and making sure that there's a right water, amount and moisture. These will dry out really fast and it'll kill the plants, so you have to constantly be walking and looking out for things that would go, wait a minute, why is that plant drooping? So we do our own seeding.
We might need to check into that. We can see about some of the own seeds that she grow. We might can just take a little spot out there and make sure we can grow our own seeds, and that'll save us a lot of time.
Yes. Starting the seedlings, we just do seed trays, and you start to grow them up big enough, and then you transplant them into the towers. Okay. We're just about to expand the seed house. We're building another 50-foot seed house, but this is where we put the seed trays. They get misted. You just do coconut fiber, and then we just let them grow because they sprout real fast, and we just get them to the right size so that we can have the seedlings. Like this one is a giant of Italy, and for whatever reason, these do not look like they're doing very well. But if you look closer, you'll see some more new growth.
Right.
So he's going to let this continue to grow and see what happens. But the outside leaves, for whatever reason, either the recent up and down in temperature can fry these, so it just depends. They're pretty sensitive to that kind of stuff. This is kohlrabi. Some of it looks beautiful and some of it doesn't look like. This is what coconut fiber would look like when it starts to dry out.
Okay.
So if you saw that in your towers, you would want to be paying closer attention.
And what we're looking at right now, this is going to be able to bring your next crop in.
Yes.
And start in. So in other words, you'll be able to go to more part of the summer of the summer.
We grow all summer.
Whoa.
Most farms right now are winding down. We're mid-gear and gearing up because we can grow in the summer because of the hydroponics. So if you're going to grow in the summer, you will have to get shade cloth, but it's something easy to put on and to cover your areas with to minimize. It cuts down the light about 40% because the sun is what will kill you. Because the plants will keep growing. Once they get over 80 degrees at night, they'll stop germinating, so then it'll stop. But if you have the shade cloth, you can help keep the temperatures down, and the pot system has a insulating factor to it.
Okay.
So the inside of the root system is insulated and stays much cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. I mean, you wouldn't think with such an open container it would happen, but it does. What you want to look at is what the light reduction is going to be, because it goes from like 10% light reduction all the way up to 60% light reduction. I'm guessing you're going to be at the end of the 60% just because of the proximity and the height. That does increase your light. Because for most big housing developments, the roofs get used for their air conditioning units, and that's blowing a lot of hot air, so you wouldn't want to try and use space that would be near something like that because it would affect your environment. That's creating a different environment for what you're growing. If you can find things that grow well in an environment that's maybe much hotter, and I don't know if it's more moist or not, but if it is, then you would want to try and grow crops that grow specifically well in that environment. Strawberries are a fruit unto themselves, so you need specific nutrients for strawberries. You would have to have dedicated towers for strawberries. You would have to have a whole dedicated area for that. They're a lot of work. Although they grow a lot longer in these towers, it's a lot of work. Tomatoes drink a lot of water, and they like a lot of water, but what will happen is they'll drink so much water that they'll pop and burst. The tomatoes would just drink all the water, that any rainwater, when it starts to rain, they'll just start splitting, so all the tops of them will end up with big split marks. They're very difficult to sell that way, and they're very difficult to use. They taste fine, they just don't look right. Permanent variety, which means they grow to a specific size and then they'll stop growing. If you do indeterminate, they'll continue to grow. A tomato is a vine. It wants to grow, so it's not necessarily built for these, but a determinate, we bring them in when we push the leaves, the sides down. It's a whole process, but they're a taller tower and they're only 3 high. We have stuff under them now, but as the tomatoes grow in, nothing will be in the ground pots underneath it. So again, might not be an ideal crop for you, except for maybe in a very small corner, because it's going to take up a lot more space and it needs specific care. I would say lettuces are always a great way to start because it's a fairly easy crop to go. The seeds grow pretty well if you get pelleted seeds, which are bigger and easier to work with. So they'll germinate pretty quick, they'll grow well. You learn how to harvest, how to plant. They have a short life cycle. So to full maturity, it's a shorter crop, which will help keep attention span. When you start to look at varieties of lettuces, there's a green leaf, there's a red leaf, there's a green oak, a red oak, there's romaine, there's a summer crisp. I mean, right there are 6 different varieties of lettuces that you could be growing. Kohlrabi's a pretty quick crop. Some of the salad turnips are. Collard greens are a pretty quick crop, so some of them are a little bit faster. And something like collards would be, it's sort of like our kale. You can take the leaves and it'll keep growing. So you're not harvesting the whole top of the plant off and killing it. You're gonna harvest leaves and let it keep growing, so it's something that'll keep giving for a while. Then once it's hit its lifespan, you pull it out and start all over. You might wanna try a little bit of spinach, depending on how much shade you have. The spinach will not do well when it gets super hot.
Okay.
So you might want to think about what you want to try and grow in the summer versus what you want to try and grow in the winter. There are winter crops that will do well in Florida, but they won't make it through the summer. Well, we always knew we were going to do a diversified farm because, I mean, I don't want to just eat lettuce. I want to eat arugula, and I want to have tomatoes, and I want to have peppers. So I was growing, we're growing for what we want and what the general, population wants. You don't just want one thing. I mean, I guess we could have, but it didn't really occur to us. Depending on your environment, some plants are more resistant to certain pests than others. So it's going to depend on location sometimes. A good example would be aphids. We have an issue with aphids occasionally.
Yeah, we have problems with that in the garden.
They're a site-specific bug, so they'll go back to the exact same spot over and over again. So we try and find specific crops to go in that spot that are more aphid resistant, or that they're not as in love with as others. Because they have a tendency to like certain things and not like others. So you try and grow those things in those areas that would sort of repel them to a certain extent. Collards do really well in the system, but any of these holes, that's grasshoppers and caterpillars. So you'll notice right away when you have a bug issue. Grasshoppers and caterpillars right now is big for them for us. And probably will be through the summer, but they didn't exist all winter. So some of it's seasonal. On the rooftop, I don't think you're gonna have a caterpillar issue or a grasshopper issue, just because of the height. We use biologic agents, which are already OMRI approved, which is organic approved, so we're not using anything that's not already organic approved. And they attack the bugs and how they reproduce. So we look for biologics. It specifically targets how the bugs reproduce and how they grow and how they attach, like aphids use these as suckers, so it deforms their suckers so they can't suck anymore, so it helps disperse them rather than changing anything chemically on the plants or anything like that, but we look for anything that's organic approved. I can tell you one of the agents that's a biologic agent is called Aza Direct. That's more for aphids. That's a newer agent. It's very, very good. Sometimes using something as simple as hydrogen peroxide works really well for defending against certain bugs. It just depends. You have to do lots of homework on. Now, some of them do really well with it, and some plants do not do well with hydrogen peroxide at all. So you sort of have to weigh what you're going to use. Even something as simple as liquid soap, like Dove, works great on certain things. But that is considered a pesticide. So when someone says, do you use any pesticides? If anybody ever tells you, no, we don't use anything, they don't have a farm. Because the requirements are so stringent on anything, like something as mild as a hand soap is considered a pesticide.
Wow.
So you have to do a lot of education as well and say, anybody who tells you they don't spray, probably not telling you the truth. Or they are truly a purist and don't spray anything, but they don't have much of a crop because the bugs will eat it all up. I mean, they'll just destroy it. There's other beneficial insects that you can buy that help attack those. This is a huge area with a lot of wetlands around, so it would be tough to use biologic agents, bugs. But some farms can really do well with bug agents that do well in fighting some of those things. It just sort of depends on location. Here's a perfect example of the ladybugs that are beneficials. So you can go out and buy boxes and boxes of ladybugs and set them loose, and they'll live on your plants and do very, very well. We do try and look for beneficials if we can. Some of the plants are, like some of the herbs specifically are strategically put because they do attract or repel, depending on. We have a beekeeper that we work with that brings bees, so we have the bees around, and even some of the stuff we'll let go to seed and flower specifically for the bees and leave it longer, even though it's of absolutely no use to us, just because it's beneficial to the bees. Just have fun with it. Enjoy what you're doing. I mean, if you don't enjoy what you're doing, there's sort of no point in doing it. So to impassion the kids that you have working on this stuff, to enjoy working with their hands and seeing the fruits of their labor, and always give the glory to God, but to be able to see something start to finish and being able to eat it, there's a tremendous amount of satisfaction in being able to do that. So imparting that to other generations, I think, is a huge gift. The use of fresh produce beats everything else. And once you get a taste for it, you can taste the difference, and then you really know, okay, what exactly am I getting here? I think the possibilities are endless.